Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of the podcast for this week, where we get into our main topic, talking about books and our favorite books and all the good shit about books. So, strap in, get a book. I don't know. So books are like movies that you can read.
God damn
You know what I mean?
Did you just come up with that on the fly, or did you have to think about that for a little bit?
I've been thinking about it all week. Are a song that you can read.
Books are a song that is made out of words
that you read.
Yeah,
the song made out
Books
of words.
are like comics without the pictures.
Unless they have pictures.
Then it's a picture book. We're talking novels here.
Comics.
Nobody has a picture book in their list, do they?
I have
do.
a pop-up book.
I should have included in my top 5 that book that is like a kid's book that's about a boat, and like there's cutouts in it, so like each page is a new layer and like a sideways cutout of the boat. I love that book as a kid. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know
right?
exactly what
Okay.
I should have included like the kids' books that has like a sock puppet in there that as you turn each page, it's just like a little kitty.
I made the joke
What about-
this morning for breakfast. I was like, dude, I'm gonna have the Very Hungry Caterpillar on my list.
Yes.
What about the books that they would have like the buttons on the side that you press?
Yes!
Make noise. Yeah.
Those are the worst.
Good. What? No, those books are awesome. I had like superhero ones of those books, and it'd have like little clips. Like,
I had a
was
Star
always
Wars one.
yeah,
Scared of them.
you were scared of them because
As a
when the
kid.
batteries start to go out and the audio gets fucked up,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to be like you press the button, it's like, let's go, everybody.
Let's go, everybody.
Let's go, everybody.
Not today, Satan.
All right. So, who wants to start off with their top 5? Which one do you guys wants to go first?
Oh, none of us.
Don't. Why?
Wow. No, I was
Okay.
just observing. No one came out of the woodwork.
Well, I don't want to do mine first since I'm hosting. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Christina, go for yours because
Go
I'm
for yours.
gonna have
Book
a
number
lengthy
1.
argument with Jeff.
What's your number 1? What was it?
The Great Gatsby.
The Great Gatsby. So that book is boring and it sucks. Why do you like it?
I knew that was how today was gonna go.
Yeah, I knew it too. That's why I didn't want to go first.
Come on though. We got to
It's
discuss
okay. He's
it.
gonna tear me apart.
I really like the whole book. I don't think it's boring at all. I think it tells like a great tragedy.
Okay.
I like the fact that it is a love story that does not have a happy ending.
Okay.
Hello, I am now rich.
Yeah. But he dies.
Yeah.
You think it's a good
He dead.
like representation of the era?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
People,
I think it's really cool.
people like it for that reason.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool representation. It's just, I think it's a great book. I like the movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that it's not good. I think that
Why do you think it's not good?
I think that nobody learns any lessons throughout the entire. There's no growth in any characters at all throughout the whole book. Everything starts and ends exactly the same for everybody. If that makes sense.
I don't think so.
I don't think that anybody goes on
I think
a real journey, if you will.
the narrator, the character that is telling the story grows a lot. Like he sees these experiences and he has a great story to tell. And I feel like he sees the love and he is very touched by it. And I disagree with you.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. I that's my personal opinion of the book. I won't say that that it's a. I guess I wouldn't say it's a bad book because of how well respected it is in literature history. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I won't say I think Jackson Pollock is a bad artist, even though I don't get or enjoy his art in any way, shape, or form. Like he's certainly earned his place amongst the greats. So I think that book is similar to that, in my opinion. What do you think of The Great Gatsby, Spencer?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think there were numerous. Here's the thing. I was conflicted on what to take from it as far as no one. At first, I kind of took the point of the book to be no one makes any growth or change or accepts faults or flaws that may exist within themselves, specifically with Gatsby.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love how open books are, as opposed to most other forms of media, to interpretation.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I still was bored. I read it because I was required to.
Yeah.
And I doubt that I would have finished it if I hadn't been required to.
I mean, I was definitely required to read it, but I read it quicker than we were
Most.
required to read it because I liked it so much.
I have a problem with a lot of the classics, though. So
That's fair. That's fair.
I don't know. I find a lot of them to be uninteresting.
Yeah.
Have you ever
quite a
read
few.
Dickens? Like, holy shit.
Yeah. Well, Dickens, especially, like at that specific time, you were paid per page. So like
That's true.
So there was a whole period in literature history where stuff is just unnecessarily verbose simply because you would make more money that way.
I gotcha.
And I think that was to the detriment of a lot of otherwise great books.
Mhm.
You know, like I think the point of a lot of Dickens stories is fine. Just some of them are way longer than they need to be.
Mhm.
I guess. I don't know. What's your number one, Spencer?
It's hard for me to pick a number one. I guess
That's right. You said in no particular order.
Yeah, I gun to my head, I guess House of Leaves, just because I still am affected by that book. Like, I carry with me some of the strange emotions that book made me feel, and some of the moments from that book still pop up in my head in daily life, and I'll just remember a line here or there. It really fucked with me.
Yeah.
It fucked with me on a deep level, and I couldn't at the time understand why, and still am kind of questioning why it hit me as hard as it did at certain points, even now, when the first time I read that book was 10 years ago.
Yeah. It's I feel like there's no reason to go over The Great Gatsby. Like everybody's pretty much familiar with what that is.
Yeah.
But maybe not the case with House of Leaves. That was my second favorite on my list, so I'm glad that there was that overlap. For those of you who are listening who haven't ever read House of Leaves, fucking go buy that book and read it. I don't even care if you're not a fan of reading. You will love this book. What genre is it, Christina?
I haven't ever finished it, but I don't think I can put it under a genre at all.
It's a puzzle novel.
Yeah.
It's horror and it's also love. And it's a tragedy.
It's really good. I don't know. It's a very cumbersome.
It's also
book.
nonfiction.
You know, like
Yeah, it is nonfiction.
It's hard to take in.
Yeah,
like
so,
all of the different things that are happening.
Yeah, so House of Leaves, to break down what it's about, it's a fiction book presented as nonfiction. It's a story of one of the main characters, Johnny Truant, a ne'er-do-well, a waster-all, if you will, tattoo artist, who is describing a book that he is reading called House of Leaves, which is a written account of a film documentary that is being written by a blind person who is watching this movie. And the movie is called The Navidson Project, and it's about
The Navidson Record,
excuse me, and it's about a photojournalist. What's Navidson's first name? I can't remember.
I forget as well.
About a photojournalist, last name Navidson, whose family moves into a house, and they discover that the house is larger on the inside when measured than it is on the outside. And rooms shift and begin to appear out of thin air that should not exist, that should lead to the outside, but there's nothing outside. And it's kind of a slow exponential descent into horror and madness, and more or less a lot of symbolism about a labyrinth. The house itself kind of becomes labyrinthian in nature, and it's all sort of an allegory for Navidson's own I guess personal demons that he deals with from his past, some decisions he's made that he would wish had been different, that begin to affect both him and his family. Meanwhile, the other main protagonist, Johnny Truant, who's writing his take on reading this book written about the movie, also begins to experience hallucinations and begins to lose his mind as things get worse for Navidson and his family. So it's several parallel narratives that overlap at times, and the book itself is formatted very uniquely and very strangely to where you read footnotes that then become entire chapters. There's like an index that you have to reference at times. There are appendices that you go to that are collections of poems and letters and photographs that all tie back to some of the events of both stories. You'll be reading it, left to right like you normally would in a book, and then suddenly the text shifts downward, and so now you've rotated the physical book in your hand, 90 degrees, and you're reading like vertically across each page. There's sequences where, as things start to happen in more rapid succession, there's less and less words on each physical page. So as a reader, it's formatted in a way that you start to kind of identify with the characters, because like if you're reading this book out in public, it's almost an embarrassing thing. Like people will look at you and think like, what the fuck is that person doing with that book?
Flipping through pages why are they, madly.
Yeah, why are they flipping through the pages so fast? Like faster and faster? Why are they rotating the book around? Like why are they flipping back and forth between pages?
Why do they have a handheld mirror to read portions of this?
Yeah, like all kinds of crazy stuff. And I feel like all of the things that the author, Mark Z. Danielewski, employs in that book could come off as like kitschy and cheesy and just like I don't know, like a bad form of art, if you will.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It ends up working beautifully well. So absolutely, like maybe more than anything else, because I feel like a lot of the stuff that we have on our lists aren't as underground as that book, if you will.
Yeah.
Like fucking read this book. Everybody, I think we all agree.
I do agree. Even
great
though I've
fucking
not finished it yet.
One of a kind,
Totally
unique
agree.
novel.
As I was reading it, I remember feeling as if my own self began to have parallels with Johnny Truant, just because this book would start affect my daily life. I would want to go back and get. I would want to cease what I was doing at any given point if I got a thought in my head of, oh man, I wonder if this is going to happen, or I wonder if this has anything to do with this, because there are bits and pieces of the book that kind of. BioShock Infinite did this really well, where it'll give you context clues, but it won't give you the pin that holds those clues together until farther down the line. So you have all the information that you need, you just don't have the one that connects everything with each other. And it was just very, very almost unsettling at times to be reading this book and feeling as if I myself was starting to question my own reality.
Yeah.
Like, it was incredible.
Yeah, it's a really one of a kind experience, and it's one that I don't think we will ever see adapted to any other medium. I think that it was intentionally written in such a way, with all of the strange formatting and the multiple narratives and everything, that you could never make a movie out of it. You could never turn it into a graphic novel or anything like that. Like to experience this story at all, like you have to read the book. That's the only way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
read
so
it,
dependent upon that form of art, and really pushes the boundaries of what's possible with the written word.
Oh, it just barely works in its current form.
Yeah,
like having read it 2 or 3 times, I have no idea how you would even attempt to transpose that to a different medium.
Yeah, for sure. So second favorite book, Christina.
You didn't talk about your first favorite book.
Right, yeah, my first favorite. I was thinking we were already on second, because that's House of Leaves is my second. My personal first favorite book, my favorite book ever written that I've ever read, is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Guys, why is Fahrenheit 451 not included on either of your lists when it is the best book ever written?
It is a really fucking good book.
I just got flashbacks to the day that we met.
Man, so it's by Ray Bradbury, who appears twice on my list as an author. He's hands down my favorite author ever. Fahrenheit 451 gets compared to 1984, Logan's Run, fucking what else? Brave New World. It's a dystopian.
Which probably pisses you off.
It does. It's a dystopian science fiction, but it's one that stands the test of time. more so than some of those other books, I think, and doesn't come off as paranoid. I think 1984 also stands the test of time for sure. But 1984 also comes off a little bit unnecessarily paranoid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But whereas basically the world that this book is set in is the future, the near future, and building materials are to the point where houses don't burn, right? Nothing's flammable. So the fire departments have been reworked, and their job is now to burn books, which have been banned and outlawed by the U.S. government, basically as a means to quell any sort of insurrection. They're viewed as unnecessary. To quote the main antagonist, Fire Chief Beatty, the term intellectual in this world has become the insult that it always deserved to be.
Does it sound familiar?
What?
Does that sound familiar?
Exactly. It's I think there's still a lot of parallels to today, especially with things that we have like fucking people thinking the earth is flat and denying that global climate change happens at all. All sorts of anti-science views, clinging to religious dogmas, as opposed to things that have provable,
real, tangible existence.
Yes. And, we sort of see that pushback now. You can see it in things like Fox News, where people like Bill Nye are attacked simply for expressing the opinion that science is important, and people brush it off as like, oh no, science, if you believe in science, you're stupid. Like that's a mindset.
In and of themselves are conspirators, and that is their only role.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we see in our world today, and that's what this book is all about. So it's a way to shut down all that shit, so the government can just keep making money off of wars. And it shows people in like a common thing that happens throughout the book is, for the most part, everybody just watches TV all day long. Specifically, they watch like soap opera style shows and reality shows. And they're on like big wall-sized televisions. And this was written in like the early 40s. So this was kind of ahead of its time in predicting these things. And when they're not watching television, they have what's described in the book as seashells of sound in their ears, which are like earbuds like we have now, which were totally not conceived of back then. And they're wireless. And so they're always listening to things on the radio. And it's all just like fluff. It's all, like I said, reality shows, shit like that with no point behind it and stuff. And it's barely even the news. But every once in a while, a quick news broadcast happens in the background as characters are having a conversation. And it's always about an ongoing war that's happening in the world. It is World War III. And it keeps talking about how they're closer, getting closer and closer to the United States being just totally fucking nuked off the map, and the entire world undergoing absolute nuclear catastrophe. And nobody ever listens to it. None of the characters ever really hear it, and none of the characters acknowledge it or discuss it in any way, because they're so wrapped up in their own worlds that it just doesn't affect them at all. And I think that also hammers home some things that we have in modern day currently, where catastrophes happen overseas that we're aware of it, but we don't really care. We're much more concerned about like how much is gas today, or like am I going to,
or how much time am I going to have to do the things that I want to do at this moment in time?
Yeah, exactly. So it's really, really cool. But the thing I love most about Bradbury is his writing style is very like, it's like reading poetry in the form of prose. There's no other author that I can think of that is able to have a paragraph that reads so beautifully as poetry and transitions so flawlessly into more of a narrative prose style. It's always shifting back and forth, and I think he masters that more than most. Do you think that's a fair statement of his writing
absolutely.
ability?
Yeah, I agree.
Like the seashells of sound, like, you know what I mean? Instead of saying she has a radio in her ear that she's listening to,
right.
The paragraph is something along the lines of every night she falls asleep listening to the waves of sound crashing against the shores of her ears. on the tiny seashells in her inner ears, and every night they carry her way into her dreams, and that's
Yeah.
it. And so it's like you're left to interpret that basically he's describing earbuds, but he does it in such a poetic way that like when he wrote it in the 40s, you still think, if you were reading it then, you still think of earbuds, even though it's something that didn't even exist at that time. You know what I mean?
He
Yeah.
can paint
Yeah.
that picture for you.
Yeah, exactly. He paints it so beautifully. And things like the fire trucks, they're never called fire trucks. They're called salamanders because they're like red dragons with flashing fire that barrel down the streets. And it's just cool shit like that, you know? The mechanical hound, like it's never called, oh, it's like a robot. It's described as a mechanical hound that has its own little fucking doghouse in the fire department, and its job is to hunt down and inject a paralyzing agent into would-be illegal book hoarders, so that they can be sentenced to death, as is usually the case, or punished appropriately. It's really cool, and there's powerful imagery in it. Specifically, the main protagonist, Guy Montag, is a fireman, and he becomes woke, to put it in modern day
Oh,
parlance.
that's perfect. That's perfect.
He becomes woke whenever he's doing his daily job, his routine, and he goes to a lady's house where she has her pile of books and they're doused in kerosene. He pulls out his fire hose, which spits fire, and begins to burn down the books, and the lady escapes custody and throws herself onto the pile of books. And he does his job. He keeps burning away, burns her alive on top of her pile of books, and kind of goes home and wonders, like, what the hell is in a book that is so impactful that someone would die for it? And like I said, he becomes woke. So he steals a book from the next incident and reads it, and instantly is hooked on the whole concept of it, and kind of joins sort of an underground movement from there. It's really, really fucking cool. You read it recently, right?
Yeah.
Didn't you
Yeah.
read it last summer
Yeah,
when
I
we were on
did.
vacation?
Yeah.
What I mean, what did you think of it? How do you think it holds up? And
I thought it was incredible. I mean, there were points where I was like, what is he describing, like a TV? What?
yeah,
Yeah, like it really holds up, definitely, like very well, especially with like the way society is now. So like thinking about how a lot of people spend most of their times on their phones and
Yeah.
not caring about what's actually happening in the world. It was very powerful.
yeah. So what do you think, Spencer? Should have been number one on your list, right?
You know,
God
it's
damn it.
funny. We're doing this episode this weekend because there was an Ask Reddit thread where people were talking about famous people that they knew or had worked with or what have you. And there was a pretty large discussion about people who, well, at least claimed to have known Ray Bradbury.
Oh, cool.
And one of them was talking about how he was the son of one of Bradbury's editors, one of his
Okay.
copy editors. And he quoted Bradbury as saying, upon being asked about the subtext of Fahrenheit specifically, and all of the things that people draw from it, he was quoted as simply saying, "No, it's about how people watch too much damn television."
Yes. The guy's a goddamn hero.
Yes. I read it when it was recommended to me by Joshua Burns, a friend
nice.
of mine from just middle school, I think. And I had started to get into like underground music and like punk and all this different stuff, and started my first big anti-establishment streak.
Oh yeah, it's a good subversive book. You know, fuck the man, fuck the system.
Yeah, and that's what I took from it as a young man, and then as I got older, I read it again in high school. I think junior or senior year, and was able to pick out some other things from it, and it really just it helped cement in my mind as a young man to always be questioning the information that you're given. That's what I took from it. I remember specifically the moment when he actually reads that book for the first time.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, wow, we cannot ever let society get to that point. This man, the description, it reminded me, and you are going to hate this the most, but in one of the Dark Tower books.
Oh, God damn it.
I'm a big fan of authors who are capable of writing incredibly descriptive
Descriptions of like robot Doctor Dooms with golden snitches and lightsabers
of things that we take for granted.
Oh, right.
In one of the Dark Tower books, in the second
one,
one of the characters drinks a Pepsi for the first time.
Okay, is it the gunslinger because he comes to Earth and he gets to drink a Pepsi?
Kind of, sort of. The Pepsi gets brought through a portal in space and time from New York to Gilead, where he is currently in the wastelands of, but that's neither here nor there.
Sure.
And he drinks a Pepsi, and there's a whole paragraph dedicated to the reaction that he has to such a sweet, cold, incredible beverage that had even more sugar in it than his old mentor's coffee did, and how he couldn't believe that there was any sadness on this world Earth when such a beverage existed for anyone to be able to have.
He has a good point based on that recent Pepsi commercial, though. I mean, why is there sadness when we have Pepsi and everybody wants to join the conversation?
How did it stay so cold through the portal?
It's a cold portal.
Is it a cold portal?
I don't know.
But I remember being I remember being blown away with the way that the way that Bradbury described to me, the reader, the reaction of reading this book, and how I took reading for books for granted, reading from books for granted, and that's the main part that stuck with me as I've grown older. It's been many years since I read it, but yeah, I hold Bradbury responsible for my fuck the man kind of thing a little bit.
Nice. Spencer, what's your second favorite book?
The next one, let's talk about Choke.
Okay.
Like I said, it's hard for me to come up with a top 5 that's actually in order of anything, but I read Choke right after I read Fight Club.
Yeah.
Someone had given me Invisible Monsters, and I completely didn't get the hype around Invisible Monsters.
Really?
Yeah, I for some reason found it to be a chore of a book, and I felt like it was.
I was surprised that you picked Choke out of all of his books.
Well, I'm about to tell you why.
Yeah, I mean, I assume I'm just letting you know.
It was Fight Club or Choke was really what it came down to me. I felt like Fight Club was kind of something that more people were familiar with.
Sure.
But I was obsessed with the way that he wrote Fight Club, and I wanted to read more. Invisible Monsters wasn't my bag, and what was it? Is it what's the collection of short stories? Haunted?
Yeah, I think so.
Not my cup of tea either. But Choke is essentially about a sex-obsessed narcissist who believes himself to be the victim of life.
I couldn't even remember which one Choke was until you said that. It's the one where he gets the anal bead stuck in his ass.
It's the one where he gets the anal bead stuck in his ass, yes.
Yep.
And as a late teenager, when I read this, it really made me think internally about a lot of things. It's called Choke because his primary form of making money, besides working at this Renaissance fair with his good friend who can't stop masturbating, is to go to a restaurant, and he explains that if someone believes that they have had a hand in absolutely saving you, in saving your life, saving another human being's life, then they will feel an attachment to you forever. So he makes himself choke. Once he has found his mark at a restaurant or what have you, he lodges a piece of food in his throat, gets their attention specifically. They save his life, and they continue to send him cards every now and again with money in them. If he needs anything, he can ask them for it because they feel this connection, this visceral, they have saved him. But for him, it's all about the manipulation.
Right. Just having other people take care of him.
Having other people take care of him. But at the same time, he has this view of the world that he's just been absolutely fucked by everyone. And as he went on his journey, discovering himself and discovering the skewed way that he looked at the world, and also working through the complicated relationship that he had with a person who he considers to be his mother, who he believes is his mother, who would he would go through the foster system, many different families, and every now and again, just seemingly at random, she would show up and essentially kidnap him.
Right.
And be like, okay, well, you're with your mom now. I've got you back. Don't you ever leave me, and don't you ever love anyone as your mother other than me. You don't care about her, do you? Assure me you don't care about her. It was just with the tumultuous relationship that I have with my own mother, combined with my own inflated sense of self at the time.
Yeah,
It taught me a great many lessons about trying to look at my own life objectively.
right.
And
It's a lot about ego. It's very much like
yes.
about allowing ego death, as they say, to occur, right?
Yes, and about taking responsibility for your own actions or inaction.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I've read that. That is a really good one. I had almost completely forgotten about it. I usually say that Survivor is my favorite.
Yeah. I've not read Survivor.
I also pretend not to like it, but deep down inside, totally fucking love Rant because it's just so fucking weird. But no, Choke is actually really good. I do remember reading that, and you're right. It's like you get like such an inside view into all this just weird, fucked up shit, and then slowly realize that like when you start reading the book, you're like, damn, these people are all so fucked up. And as you continue reading the book more and more, you're like, damn, these people are just like me.
Yeah, man, I am fucked up, and I am also a person, and those two things are not mutually exclusive, and that's okay.
And by the end of it, you're like, shit, you know what? Maybe I can be okay too.
Yeah, exactly. It really hit me, and I remember trying to have this conversation with other people who were, because every high school's got those Chuck obsessed readers who only ever read Polnick books.
Yeah. They're not all great.
No, they're not all great.
What's the one about the lady that dies in the gangbang?
What?
He has a book that's about a lady that dies in a gangbang.
Jesus Christ.
Doesn't he?
I think that might have been one of the short stories in Haunted.
No, dude. There's a whole book of it.
Is there?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember what it's called, man. Shit, but
that wasn't in Lullaby, was it?
No.
Okay.
What's Lullaby?
Lullaby is about a song that kills people.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one too. Shit, I always forget that's one. That one's not terrible.
No, not at all.
Is there something he builds like models and smashes them?
Mm-hmm.
That's like a thing in Lullaby, right?
Yeah,
whatever.
But yeah, that's why Choke's on the list, because it's a personal thing. I attribute that as a book that led me to a great deal of introspective thinking and personal growth.
Yeah, he has a certain shock factor. Chuck P does.
You see, I think,
and I think it's reeled in. Even though some of the most shocking stuff in his books happens in that book,
yeah,
it makes more sense and it doesn't come off as unnecessary as it can in other books. You know what I mean? Not so much Fight Club and Invisible Monsters, but like, like Haunted. I mean, that's all Haunted is. Like, there's no point to any of those short stories at all.
Yeah,
but it never feels out of place in Choke, I feel like.
Well, especially in Choke, I feel like half of what people usually talk about in that book as shock value is really just brutal honesty, that humans are shocking.
Yes.
We are all incredibly scary, like at various points in our life or various points in whatever beliefs we hold or thought processes that we hold to ourselves and don't want anyone else to know about.
Right.
That is one of the things that makes us human.
It's like the weird stuff that we jerk off to.
Like the weird stuff that we jerk off to.
Sure.
That's the whole point of the book. Is just, hey man, you want to jerk off? Jerk off. And if you want to be free, be free.
Have you ever read anything by Chuck Palahniuk, babe?
I think so. I don't remember which one it was. I think I've finished one of them, but I've tried to start Rant a couple of times.
Okay.
And just couldn't.
It's often said that his books are like difficult for a female reader to get into, and I think that that's for a lot of them at least, a pretty fair assessment.
Okay.
I don't think that that's like sexist or anything to say that. I think that very much his books are just about like sort of, I don't know, they're real transgressive and about a lot of testosterone fueled ideas that I think are less likely to occur in females. Do you think that that's fair, Spencer?
Yeah, I don't think that's. I think you can make that observation.
Yeah, I mean, Fight Club, like that's more appealing to to men, I feel like, than it is. I mean, you hated Fight Club, the movie.
Yeah.
I know you haven't read the book, but you think it's one of the dumbest movies you've ever seen, right?
Yeah.
Whereas,
I really don't
I feel
like
like
it at
every
all.
young guy at some point was like, "Shit, Fight Club's the best fucking movie I've ever seen."
Yeah, well, that book is quite literally a sausage fest.
Yeah,
Like, for one thing, the only female character really to speak of is most of the time, and that's what's cool about Fight Club is that he kind of presents her as an antagonist, but
Yep.
once everything comes together near the end, you have this realization that's like, she's the fucking most normal and non-confrontational person in
Out
the
of
entire
everyone.
book.
yeah, for sure. What's your what was your second favorite, babe?
It was another required reading, Still Alice.
Tell me about it.
So I actually
Never
read it.
heard of it.
I read
Steel
it.
Alice is my favorite 80s metal band.
Still. This is why I don't talk. But Still Alice is about a lady named Alice, and she at the beginning of the book, she's a Harvard professor.
Okay.
At the beginning of the book, she finds out she has early onset Alzheimer's.
Oh, okay. Shit.
And it goes through her journey, and it really explains like how she's feeling and how she's reacting to her family members. It's a really heartbreaking book, actually.
Is it nonfiction? Is it like a true story?
I don't believe so. I don't believe it was
Okay.
based on a true story. But it follows her throughout like the entire process, like trying to not cure it because there's no cure.
Sure.
But trying to treat it and trying to slow it down because she finds out very, very early. Like it's super early, and it's not early onset Alzheimer's is not super, super common.
Okay.
Um,
But that is a real thing. Like how
Yes.
young?
I think she was 30,
Fuck.
30 or
almost 30.
40.
Same thing.
Not the same thing, but yeah, you feel for her. You can understand like her confusion
Yeah.
because she doesn't know where she is at one point. That's how they find out that she has early onset. She gets lost in her hometown
Okay.
and she can't find her way back home.
Okay.
And it's a really heartbreaking book. I really recommend it.
Is it
If you're at all interested in neuroscience or psychology in
Yeah.
any way, it's an amazing book. You will cry.
is it told
Confirmed.
Is she like the narrator? Like it's told from her
Yes.
perspective. So like, does it become like
Eh,
fragmented sort
well,
of in a similar manner to?
I believe, man, I think at some points it changes narrators.
Okay. That's what I was. If it was like first person or third person, I guess was what I was curious about.
Because yeah, at the end, she's not telling the story anymore
Okay.
because she doesn't know anyone. She can't even go to the restroom by herself. Like she can't
Fuck.
do anything by herself.
Sounds really fucked.
It's really, really sad, and the ending is just the most heartbreaking thing.
I don't usually really like sad books.
It's a good one.
I'll
Very
check it
good
out
one.
though. Do you have it here?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll totally read it. Totally read it. Spencer, what do you think about early onset Alzheimer's? Do you want it?
I don't want it.
Oh, okay.
What kind of a I was letting you guys go, and then that's the question that I get.
All right. Well, I mean,
I haven't read it though, so I don't have much to add.
Yeah. That sounds like a cool book to me, though.
No, absolutely. It definitely sounds like an experience worth having and something worth trying to wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
I will definitely check it out. I'll skip my second since we already went over it because it was House of Leaves. I'll go on to my third. My third is From the Dust Returned, also by Ray Bradbury.
That's also a good book.
Yeah. So From the Dust Returned is basically, it's more or less like Addams Family without the humor. Not to say that the book is humorless, but it's a less goofy version of the concept of the Addams Family. Would you say that's kind
feel
of
like
fair?
it's pretty goofy, but not in the same way.
Right. Not like it's not a comedy.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, it's not.
It's much more, but it still has,
I don't think I finished it.
it's
actually,
basically a
but
distillation of the heartwarming moments of the
Yeah.
Addams Family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The basic idea is that it's a family of sort of spooky people, like kind of. I mean, there's like a vampire kind of, and there's like another vampire kind of, but they're two different things.
A mummy.
Yeah, there's a mummy, great grandmere 1,000 times removed.
Yeah,
is just a mummy in the basement that's like their great grandmother who only awakens during their family reunion every year to sip some ancient wine. The main protagonist,
it's so cute.
It's really cute. If you like anything Halloweeny and spooky, you'll fucking love this book. The main protagonist is just is the youngest member of the family, and he's just a normal boy who keeps expecting, almost like X-Men style, for his, weird traits to manifest, but they never do. And he finds out that his purpose is to pass on the stories of this family because they're all slowly dying because of the modern age. Nobody believes in them anymore, and this is making them cease to exist. So they have this big family reunion. It's like every 100 years that they do it or something like that, right?
That was how many, yeah.
And like his uncle comes, and his uncle is like a guy with big leathery bat wings, and he picks him up and flies him around the inside of their house, and he's teasing him, like touching the bat, his like shoulder blades popping through because he's kind of a scrawny boy. And he's like, "Oh, I think it's gonna be wings. I think that's what you're gonna get. They're gonna pop out anytime." And he tries to drink the wine that his mother and father are drinking, and they're very much like vampires, and it doesn't taste good to him. And they're like, "We'll soon," because it's implied that it's like blood and that they're drinking blood, and that you'll get a taste for it pretty soon. And it's again similar to the Addams Family, and that like you think these people and creatures would be like horrifying monsters, and they're not. They're all like the most supportive and loving people.
Yeah,
like you totally fall in love with every single one of them. I think it's a cool representation of all things
spooky.
Yeah, dude, spooky and gothic and what have you. You've never read that one, right, Spencer?
That's correct.
You should.
Yeah,
we talked about it at work the other day, but
yeah, that's true. I was talking about the spider. He has several pets in the book that creep you out, right? When you read it, one is a spider.
I didn't finish it though.
Yeah.
So
one's a spider which crawls into his ear and uses his forelegs to vibrate his eardrums in order to speak to him, and spends its time wrapped around his ring finger with its abdomen raised up like a jeweled ring. A lot of really cool fucking concepts, and again, everything's beautifully written like poetry, as Ray Bradbury does. What's your third favorite book, Spencer? What you got on your list?
We already talked about Ready Player One a little bit, so
yeah.
I guess I'll move on to Hitchhikers.
Okay.
Which is one of those books that I was incredibly late to the party on. I still have not seen the film.
Oh my god, are you
serious?
You
that hasn't seen it. I always think it's Christina because
No.
she's so many movies she hasn't watched, but no, she has seen it and loves it.
I know, you fucking ask me this like every couple of weeks, I feel like. Yes, I've fucking seen it.
It's because the fact that Spencer hasn't seen it registers as like such an important thing to me that the thought just pops up like, shit, somebody I love very much hasn't seen this great movie and I need to make sure that they have, and I assume it's you, but no. God damn it, Spencer.
God damn it, it's you motherfucker.
Jesus Christ, the book is so fucking good, and so is the movie, and in totally different ways even. I mean, oh my god, it's amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. But I feel like at this point, I need to watch it with you. Like, it's...
Yeah.
Yes.
Fucking Sam Rockwell, dude. Fucking
I know.
Mos Def.
You don't
Oh
have
my
to
God.
convince
Morgan
me.
Freeman,
I'm
bro.
there.
We're all very upset right
damn
now.
you.
I'm there, man. I got
Anyways,
it.
let's talk about the book. Why is that your one of your favorite books ever written?
Because I have yet to read another book that made me feel the exact same way that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy did.
Yeah.
It is equal parts absurd
Yeah.
and insightful and hilarious.
It is the
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And just in a word, it's beautiful. It is such a beautifully thought of universe. It is such a beautifully written story. Like the story itself, from character to character, there is something to be loved everywhere. I remember becoming immediately in love with the concept of Zaphod Beeblebrox.
the president of the universe.
The president of the universe, just kind of being this figurehead, badass, weird Dumbledore-esque character. I pictured equal parts Albus Dumbledore and like Lemmy from Motorhead.
Yep.
When I read the book the first time, but it seemed like it came out of nowhere every time that I felt just this wave of laughter at the absurdity of one moment. There is also like I'll bring up the dolphins. So long and thanks for all the fish. When they sensed it coming and they left.
This is the beginning of the book. If you haven't read it or seen the movie,
I apologize. I'm not offering enough context. My bad.
Earth's destruction is imminent because it needs to be removed in order to make way for space, like highway bypass, and this is mirrored in the fact that the main character, his home is about to be destroyed to make way for an on-Earth highway bypass because we need more bypasses.
Yes,
is the excuse. The government's just like, sorry about you. The home's getting demolished.
It's gonna happen.
Totally oblivious to the fact that actually the whole Earth is about to be demolished.
On the way are a bunch of brick-like ships that are just about to disintegrate the whole planet. And then apparently he's saved by Mostaf. But
but the dolphins sense this, and
I remember feeling strange when I first read that. When they say they leave the Earth,
they'll just fly right up out of the water.
They're capable in their infinite intelligence to just fly out of the water into space onto greener pastures.
It's so absurd watching it in the movie.
So long and thanks for all the fish as they sing as they go. And I remember for some reason feeling like I wanted to cry at that moment as much as I wanted to laugh. The way that it's written is tragic, but with a side of comedy. And it's presented to you in such a way where it's like, yes, this is a comedy. It's not completely.
The very opening line in the book is, "In the beginning, God created the universe," and this has been largely regarded as a mistake.
As a mistake, yeah.
What I think it does, is kind of two things. So to use video games as an allegory, I think it's the best example of a comedy in literature. I think that comedy can be a difficult thing to pull off in the written word.
I agree.
For whatever reason. Like, you can read something and like your inner monologue is, that was funny. But how often do you read something that's intended to be funny that has you actually laughing out loud, right? It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Because it's not as immediate of an effect as seeing like an actor in a movie do something funny is.
Right.
So I think it accomplishes that in the same way that Portal and Portal 2 accomplished that in regards to video games, right? That they are
really the only great examples of a comedy game.
Yes, making you laugh your fucking ass off because of the things that happen in the video game. And I think Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is similar to that. The other thing I think it accomplishes and does really well is science fiction is almost always used, almost exclusively, the genre is used to, like, warn about things. It's always, you know what I mean? Like,
can you imagine this future?
Yeah, like, it's almost never presented as a good thing, right? It's like AI, you know, the original Asimov book, it's the fears that it's a representation of the fears we have of artificial intelligence, right?
Right.
Or Ready Player One even is probably partially about how bad society can get if we, allow ourselves to get lost in digital worlds. Like, there's an undertone of the dangers of video games and things like that. Like Fahrenheit 451, the dangers of television and all that kind of stuff. Whereas there's none of that in this. It is not the dangers of anything. It is using science fiction instead to sort of explore the absurdity of life and the human condition.
Yes.
In the same way that, like, the tragic comedies of Shakespeare explored the absurdity of life and the human condition.
Yes.
A reoccurring theme in the book is the question of why we're here, right?
Yeah.
To which they have been supplied an answer, but then realize they don't really know what question they're even asking.
Yes.
Like, what do you mean? Why life? Why do we exist? Like, what a stupid fucking question for you to ask. Yeah, it's fucking.
The answer is 42, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So good. So good.
Yeah, and all of the little details down to like his Douglas Adams' ability to surprise you with emotion. I remember reading about the talking to one of the people who forged the planets.
Oh yeah.
And he was talking about the mountain ranges that he designed that he thought were really good, and just these little tiny details. And it felt almost as if Douglas Adams was talking about his books at that point. Like he was living through that character, talking about, anything even so minuscule and detail oriented can be a source of pride and be a source of happiness. And I don't know, it really stuck with me the first time I read it. I didn't read it until I was maybe 20.
Really?
Yeah.
The movie was like, so the
movie
was
came out
already
when I
out,
was
right?
like a freshman in high school.
Yeah. Shit, man.
So
have you read any of the sequels to it at all?
No, I actually was not even aware there were sequels until a year after I read it the first time.
Okay. But you should definitely. I mean, if you enjoy it that much, man, you definitely got to read at least the second one. They do start to degrade in quality a little bit past that, but the second one is every bit as good as the first one.
Mm-hmm.
The restaurant at the end of the universe. But have you read the book?
I don't think I've read it fully all the way through. No,
but you've seen the movie.
Yeah.
It's one of your favorites, right?
Yeah, it is one of my favorite movies. It's like one of like maybe 10 movies that I have watched more than once.
Yeah,
because I liked it.
I think the movie is worth mentioning because I think it's one of the best fucking adaptations of a book to film, because they add things that are visual gags that couldn't have been done in the book. Like they just wouldn't have worked trying to describe what's happening. You have to see what's happening for some of the jokes to work.
Okay.
And they are so 100% in tune with the style of humor from the book. Like it's similar to, this seems like a bad example, but to you and I, we get it. It's similar to like Speed Racer, right? And how and how faithful of an adaptation it is. Like it works really fucking well. We're on the third one now. What was your third favorite book, Christina?
The Maximum Ride series.
The Maximum Ride series. Tell me about it. Hit him with it.
Okay, so gosh, it's so silly to describe, really. So it's about a group of kids who are experimented on and injected with avian DNA.
Right.
So they have wings.
Yep. Go ahead.
So it also describes like their experimentation and how they're like outcast and like trying to get away from the experimenters and not have to go back because of how bad the experiments were. And they just like band together and
become kind of like superheroes?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
Yeah.
They become this. It's just like bird people fighting back. Is it the government that is testing on them, I assume?
Yeah, I believe so. It's been a long time.
Or like
a
covert, shadowy organization.
I think it's a covert, shadowy
within the government.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What's the purpose of the test? To create some sort of super soldier to
I think that is what it is.
I know I've never read it, and I know it already. I know the whole
it's
story.
It's really well written too.
Really?
Yeah, it's a really interesting read.
Was it just like the perfect like young adult novel series for you as a young adult when you read it? Yeah,
because I mean, also it was the main character. The main character was this badass female.
Okay,
like
I can respect that.
She led the group, and there were males in the group. It wasn't like it was all females. Like the males were like following her, and it was cool.
Ironically, the same thing happened in Animorphs.
Okay,
True.
I'm serious.
I don't remember Animorphs hardly at all either.
It's actually really good.
But
it is not.
It absolutely is such a great series about war and transforming into flies and bears.
I don't know. I can't think of any young adult series that I ever really like got into.
Would you consider Harry Potter a young adult series?
Yeah, I guess that's fair. That's totally fair. Yeah, Harry Potter. There you go. That's the one I got into, and the only one, I think.
The YA novel series to end all YA novel series. Yeah. Anyone listening should check out the dystopian YA protagonist Twitter handle. I highly recommend it. It's just it makes fun of all of the tropes of a dystopian young adult series. It's perfect.
Sounds pretty good. I mean, anything else to say about Maximum? Neither of us have read it. I don't think we ever will, but
I mean, that's fair.
For something that starts with being injected with avian DNA,
It's
it really
good,
it
dude.
really
Like,
rounded out itself near the end.
They discover themselves. Like, I believe all of the characters end up having their own separate books where they like are finding out about themselves and growing into the people they want. They need
people.
to be. Fuck you, man.
It just sounds a little absurd to me. That's all.
What? So from the Dust Return doesn't sound absurd?
No,
A whole family of fucking monsters.
I get it. I'm not saying. I guess not absurd. It sounds like a show that would be on the CW that I would never watch. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like,
I mean, you've never read it, so you can't even really.
That's fair. That's fair. What's your fourth favorite, Spencer?
Well, like I said, I already talked about Ready Player One, so I was just gonna cede that that spot to you if you want to go ahead and talk about yours.
Or okay. Well, what's your fourth favorite, Christina?
Slaughterhouse-5.
That is my fourth favorite as well. Perfect.
Go for it.
Slaughterhouse-5. First off, why is it not on your list, Spencer? It's one of the best books ever written.
I agree with him on this one.
Why do you have such dumb books on your list?
He hasn't even been making fun of your books.
Yeah, I really.
Oh, I'm going to. We're almost to something by Stephen King. So
yeah, I know, and it's one that you've never heard of, and there's a reason for that. It's not a very popular one, and it's one that he put out later in life.
Okay, but well, I'm still gonna take every opportunity to shred Stephen King.
Okay,
but Slaughterhouse-5. You've read Slaughterhouse-5, right, Spencer?
No, I was gonna say, to answer your question, it's not on my list because I've never read it.
Really?
I've never read.
That's really surprising.
It's not intentional. It's just one of those things where I didn't get around to it.
I think I have it over there. You're gonna read it.
I'd love to.
Yeah. I mean, you totally obviously you've heard of it in countless conversations about some of the best books ever written, right?
Yeah, some of those conversations with you. I think I've read it just by you describing it to me so many times. Probably.
So, Slaughterhouse-5 is kind of science fiction. I mean, it definitely is, but it's not really the point of it. It's about a soldier during World War II who witnesses the firebombing of Dresden by the Germans and manages to become unstuck in time and joins up with aliens, the Trafalamarians, Trafala something.
Yeah.
Who are an alien race that exists in all moments of their lives at once, right? Like time is the same as space to them. Like you can move, your physical body along an X and Y plane. Mm-hmm. They can do so throughout their entire life experience, if you will. They're born and they die. They're not immortal, but they can move around between any of the events that occur at any given time. And so he learns this ability and begins to move around his own life, which leads to some very sad moments, touching moments, a lot of kind of learning. Yeah, I'm over
here tearing up.
Really?
Yeah, thinking about it.
A lot of learning about himself. Christina has a tattoo of a quote from the book.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have mentioned the only tattoo I have is the numbers 451 because of my first favorite book, Fahrenheit 451. But Christina has a tattoo of the phrase, "Everything was beautiful and nothing hurt." Mm-hmm. Which is,
but this book really hurts, and it's not beautiful.
Well, that's a poignant moment in the book, though. All these World War II soldiers, as the firebombing has occurred, they get stuck inside of a factory, right?
Yeah,
or a warehouse of some kind.
I believe so. Oh my gosh, yeah. This is what I'm tearing up about.
as all the destruction is going on around them, and the soldiers start asking each other what they would want to have written on their tombstones if they were to get tombstones, which in that moment they think that they won't. And everybody's given like pessimistic or real crass responses.
Yeah.
Like somebody's response is just about fucked a whole lot of women, right? Like as you would expect a macho man soldier from World War II to say. And then the protagonist says that he just wants...
he doesn't even say it.
Oh, that's right. He doesn't tell them what it is. But the next page is an illustration, one of the only two in the book.
Yeah.
That shows what it would be. And it's... just the phrase, "Everything was beautiful and nothing hurt," and that he wishes that that was everybody's goal in life. So it's kind of I don't know, an idealistic view of of war is ultimately what the book's about. Specifically, it's about genocide.
Yeah.
I mean, the main theme that's repeated over and over is how fucking wrong genocide is, right? It's like even war can be understandable on some level, but
genocide is never understandable.
Yeah,
and it's never okay.
But to seek out the entire eradication of an entire kind of people is
fucked.
Yeah, it's totally fucked because you erase their history and you do so much damage. The subtitle of the book is really long, right? It's Slaughterhouse 5, or like on the first page it gives the full title, and it's the Slaughterhouse 5.
Oh yeah, I always forget that.
The Children's Crusade, something something something, which is a reference to the Crusades.
Yeah.
And one specific crusade, the children's one, in which supposedly the Pope thought, hey, these Muslims won't fight back against a bunch of kids, so we'll send a bunch of kids to spread the word of God. And
or specifically, God will protect the children.
Yeah, and the kids all got fucking slaughtered. Like it's also a lot of things are brought up about like kind of anti-religious views.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to genocides and dogmatic views on things and how fruitless and stupid all of that is.
Mm-hmm.
All while also telling two love stories at once, right? Because he falls in love with someone after he gets captured by the aliens because he's put in like a zoo, but then I think it also with a female human. But then I think he also skips around through life and you see moments of his love before the war. It's been a minute since I've read it.
It's been a while since I've read it.
Maybe it is just the one female, but
I feel like there's another, but I would have to read it again.
What do you think about all that, Spencer? Does that just sound just fine to you?
Yeah, it sounds incredible. Just like all of the other times that I've heard about it. I just can't believe I haven't read it.
It's by Kurt Vonnegut, Indiana's own. Have you ever read anything by him? You ever read like Cat's Cradle or?
I don't know if I've read any of his novels, but he has a lot of assorted musings that are available online, and he actually has a lot of unique views on politics and the way that a democratic society works or should work or ideally could work.
Yeah.
And things like that. He clearly has a lot of insight to share that is lacking with a lot of other authors, especially ones that are still, performing their art today.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your next one, Spencer? We're on number 5 now?
Yeah,
yep.
Final round of
the
books.
same fourth, yeah. All right. So your fifth one, what is it? Hit me with that Stephen King novel.
Lisey's Story by Stephen King.
And what is Lisey's Story?
It's a book that he said he always wanted to write but felt afraid to. It started out as a story for his wife.
Okay.
The protagonist is a recently widowed widow of a famous author.
Okay.
And it takes place as she's recounting all of the times in their lives and the strange things that he was known to do. And, with Stephen King, it's always semi-supernatural or paranormal,
Right.
But in this case...
And also about authors.
Yeah. Oh, big time.
Yeah, for sure.
Big time. I'll give you that for sure. But the themes that it deals with are very, very human.
Really?
There's a place that they refer to a lot that's kind of like this interdimensional almost scenario that it could only take place in your mind, or maybe it doesn't. But it talks a lot about language. It talks a lot about words. They refer to this place that has the pool where we all go down to drink. And that's essentially where we go to tell our stories, to find the words to describe our hopes, dreams, our feelings, our emotions, and communicate with each other.
So is that also where the giant space turtle is?
No, not this time.
Okay.
Not this time. Okay.
Okay.
And as she's
I was just wondering what connection it had to the Kingiverse at large.
This one largely doesn't.
Is that why you put it on your list?
I put it on my list because it's less well known, but I think it's one of the more well written and interesting stories that he's put out, because there's a subplot that I think was pretty much entirely unnecessary of a crazy fan who's trying to get like his unfinished manuscripts published, and so like his publishing company hires this crazy fan to like
I've heard about this.
slice up her chest a little bit. And
I think
scare
maybe
her
you're
and
thinking
stuff
of
like that.
Misery, because that's also sort of the plot of Misery.
What?
Is about a crazy fan,
okay,
and that's a
alright, well.
different thing by Stephen
Yeah,
King.
and I
Okay,
think
I
that
don't know then.
subplot in Lacey's story is entirely unnecessary because
Yeah.
as she's discovering all these things that he's left behind for her, it really does a good job of trying to explore how every human being is at fault for something, and it's all about it's equal parts about what you try to do with yourself and the mistakes that you've made and the decisions that you've consciously made that hurt other people. And
Yeah.
at the same time, it speaks to the idea that we are all essentially storytellers, and we're all just trying to make each other feel something.
Right.
Like there's a
Okay.
source in this book where all of that emotion comes from, where all of that intent comes from. This pool, so to speak, where we all go down to drink is just this place inside of all of us that makes us say, Jeff, I want to make you laugh. Christina, I want to impress you with something that I've done in my life.
Why are you trying to impress my wife, dude?
I want to, like, essentially, I want to interact with you in a way that goes deeper than something at face value. I want us to share something as human beings. I want us to recognize each other for who we really are at our core, not for the face that we put on for other people.
Yeah.
That makes
And
sense.
and it changed the way that I thought about human beings completely and totally. It gave me more empathy. It gave me an even harder English language boner. I wanted to. I love because there are a few parts in the book that are just like throwaways. If somebody uses a word that's got like 4 or 5 syllables when they could have used a word that only has 2, the character would be like, "Oh, that's something nice that you pulled up from that pool. That's a good word. That's a great way to describe it. I never thought about it that way." And it's just something that I feel like we all share.
Yeah.
Like we're all essentially song and dance men and women. Like we want to make each other laugh. We want to tell stories that make the people that we care about think. We're all just trying to use.
We want our own lives to be a good story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's incredible. And I gave that whole spiel because I want you to read it, man.
I'll check it out. It
it's
sounds like maybe
It's
is
maybe
it-
300 pages in paperback.
Yeah, it's
like-
not bad. It sounds like maybe one of the few books that Stephen King has written that accidentally ended up not being terrible.
Yeah.
Right?
Son of a bitch.
For the listeners that are not aware, I think that Stephen King is without a doubt easily the most overrated piece of shit author on the face of the planet. It's not to say he hasn't done some amazing work. Specifically, 2 times he wrote a really good book, and that's Misery and Dolores Claiborne, when he fucking avoided dumbass supernatural shit. Anything of his that has to do with the Kingiverse is absolutely garbage. Just pandering garbage. Dog shit. The worst. The worst kind of dog shit. Dog shit that has orgies with underage kids and
Did you hear me bring up it? I don't like it either.
I'm just saying I'm just going on a little Stephen King rant right now,
All
okay?
right.
Okay?
I'm sorry. Anytime you go on this
Giant-
rant, it feels very personal.
Giant space turtles, okay? Fucking stealing other people's intellectual property to try to make a point for your garbage unending series called The Dark Tower that I know you like a lot, but I think is fucking stupid, and the whole concept behind it is stupid. It's just tacky. It's bad. It's not good. I don't like it. I'll never like it. But I will check out this book. In return, you should check out, because it actually, your description of it reminds me a lot of a book called Love Me, which is by Garrison Keillor.
Oh, yeah.
You should check that out. I think you'd really dig it a lot. It's
Okay.
very similar to, because it sounds like he's kind of, as is often the case, the author is Stephen King to some extent,
Yeah.
and he's maybe in some way acknowledging some of the terrible things he's done in his life.
Yeah.
Like you had said, like the conscious choices we make that hurt people.
Yeah.
That's what Love Me is all about. It's all about Garrison Keillor's real life marriage. It's not biographical, but it's also not completely fictional.
Okay.
And so kind of the book is sort of exploring a huge period in his time in his real life marriage where he was consciously making really fucking terrible decisions and just disregarding his wife completely, and also how they were able to slowly and eventually move past that. Also, Minnesota's in it a whole lot, of course, because it's by Garrison Keillor.
Of course. Lake Wobblegone.
But I think you'd like it because I know that you like Garrison Keillor's storytelling.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's very different from anything he does, like in Lake Wobegon or anything. Like, it's not funny. It's definitely not.
Yeah, it sounds tragic, actually.
It is not a comedy at all. It's way more serious, a whole more cursing. You know, there's some cussing. You think, Garrison Keillor, I didn't know you cussed.
You cussing at me?
But he cusses a little
You
bit.
cussing at me?
But no, I mean that sounds good. That Stephen King book. I will read it.
It's completely unlike anything he's ever written.
Ugh.
Again, I just can't stand the supernatural shit. Really, more than anything. Like,
There's barely any of that. Barely any of that. And what's cool about it is that it's never really established if that's the crazy ramblings of an insane artist,
right?
or if that's something that's actually happening and being experienced.
See, that's what, when you were telling me about it, like you're talking about like the pool that everyone goes to or whatever. Yeah, like that's what I was gonna ask, if it's like a physical place, because Stephen King would make that like a real physical place that like he goes to in his mind palace.
His mind palace.
In like, I am not being allegorical. This is a real thing, sort of like in. I never read the book, but the movie, they do that in the movie of one Stephen King thing, Dreamcatcher, right?
Yeah.
Right, like they go to their fucking mind libraries or whatever.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
like, the bros all share their same mind library, and
they're trying to keep the alien parasite. Yes.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yes.
So bad.
It's bad.
That's bad.
It's bad. I'm not arguing with you there.
When fucking Benedict Cumberbund goes to his mind palace in Sherlock, you're at least aware, like, that this is an allegory. This is a representation of how his mind works. This is not physically depicting what he is actually doing. So that's kind of the thing that like that gets me a lot of times about Stephen King stories. Is it's like, oh, I came up with a really cool allegory for what the characters are going through and experiencing, and like I get on board for a minute, and then it's like, no, but I mean the space turtle. It's a real
space turtle.
It's a real turtle in space. It's a giant turtle.
Why would you think otherwise?
And it's in space, and its enemy is it, who is a clown, but really is a spider. And I mean, the only way the kids can defeat it is if they they gotta fuck each other.
Fuck this girl.
They're all gonna gangbang.
They're all fucking the girl.
They're all gonna gangbang that girl. Yeah, I know they're like 12, 13 years old, but they're gonna do it, and they're in a sewer when they do it.
What do you mean, why am I strangely obsessed with the sexuality of an 11-year-old? You leave me alone. I'm an artist.
Yeah, right? Go fuck yourself, Stephen King.
One of the worst books I've ever fucking read was Stephen King.
Yeah, she's only ever read one. What is it?
The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon.
Oh,
Fuck
that's
that
the
fucking
worst
book.
one. That book is garbage.
I seriously read through the whole thing, and I was like, I was pretty engrossed in it. And I read the last little bit of it, and I fucking closed the book, and I fucking threw it across the room.
How would she feel about the end of the Dark Tower then? Isn't the end of the Dark Tower that it's the beginning again? It just starts over? And that's the whole point of the book?
There's more context. It's not the whole point of the book, but yeah.
That's pretty much it. That's what I thought.
Stephen King has this thing about how you have to kill your darlings, and
Right.
that's if you're going to be a writer, you have to be willing to take away the stuff that you want to not take away because you want to indulge your own fucking stupid egotistical brain. And that's one that he just couldn't do it. I don't think he could say goodbye to that character because he had been writing that series for like 40 goddamn years.
To some extent, yeah, I know. And like, and the characters in it, that's the series that ties together the Kingiverse more than anything, right?
Yeah, he does the most insufferable thing that's ever been done in American literature, in which he writes Stephen King into the book.
Oh my god, the characters go and visit the Stephen King.
Yes.
Oh my god,
and then I presume he tells them about the space turtle and how they have to fuck each other in order to fight it.
No, he's actually weirded out by the whole thing.
Yeah, God, he's such a fucking.
You know the car wreck that
douche.
he got into?
Yeah.
And almost died?
Yeah.
One of the characters in The Dark Tower, spoiler alert.
We're not ever gonna read it.
In case anyone else.
I am gonna go see
there.
the movie. I mean, I like Idris Elba and I like Matthew McConaughey well enough.
But one of the characters actually sacrifices himself to make King just barely survive that car wreck.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So the book
Good
he was
Lord.
writing literally saved his life if you read it at face value. It's I'm not defending that choice. I'm just telling you what happened. So anyway, final book time, you two?
Yeah,
Fucking Christ.
what's your final book?
To Kill a Mockingbird.
To Kill a Mockingbird. Great book.
Well, what needs to be said?
Not much.
That's fair. That is fair.
I mean,
not a whole lot.
Most people have read it. The reason why it's on my list is because it was actually like my first experience really with like race issues.
Okay.
And
I'm glad you said that
growing
because
up-
I couldn't remember. I get
growing up in small town
You get that and
Indiana.
Catcher in the Rye mixed
no.
up?
I get that and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh,
because I
okay.
read both books and watched both movies at the same time at the behest of my aunt, and they were one and the same to me.
Gotcha.
But anyways,
I mean, it was my first, like, it made me really think about these issues.
right.
And I read it, I mean, I feel like I was a freshman in high school when I read it, but I had really never experienced that kind of issue. I'd never taken notice because, you know.
You never considered what it was like to not be white.
Right,
and how
exactly.
that might have a negative impact on your life experiences.
And it really, I feel like it really changed who I am.
You're like, shit, this is not fair at all.
Right.
And then you're like, wait a minute. Real life is not fair at all.
Yeah.
No,
Basically.
I mean, yeah, like Spencer said, there's not a whole lot that really needs to be said about it. I feel like most people have read it.
Yeah.
Or have seen the movie or both.
I actually also watched a play.
Obviously, it's great.
And it was good.
Yeah.
Very good.
But do you have anything to say about To Kill a Mockingbird?
Great.
Fucking fantastic. If you're unaware of it, I mean, check it out, man. My last favorite. Did you already do your Spencer? This is the final one.
Yeah.
I already did my final one, because I talked about Ready Player One at the beginning of the episode.
That's right. I keep forgetting that. Yeah. So my final favorite book, the last one that we'll talk about, is Star Wars Traitor by Matthew Stover. Now, I had to include a Star Wars book, like I said, when we went over our lists, because I read the old Star Wars expanded universe when I was a young kid. Like that was the first book that I ever got at our school library was one of the Young Jedi Knight books. I don't want to brag about my own intelligence too much, but when we were in kindergarten and we got on the computers to take a reading comprehension test in order to find out what our reading level was.
Oh yeah, so did I. Who did you?
I'm just saying, and find out what our reading level was so that we could go and get a book. I got 12.9, which was the highest you can get. It's a high school graduate.
Yeah, I know.
And we went to the library.
Show off.
And I picked out. I believe that you guys were the same. It happened. I mean, we grew up in environments where it was people are
very
shockingly
easy
stupid.
to be smarter than other people.
Yeah, exactly. We were big fish in a small pond.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went to the library and I was like, shit, I've already been reading these Star Wars novels. So yeah, I'm going to get the third book in the Jedi Academy trilogy because the next one that I need to read in the trilogy of books. And they had it. It was in the 6th grade section, and I got it, and I went to check it out, and the librarian was like, you can't check that out. It's way above what grade you're in. And I was like, well, I got a 12.9 plus. And they're like, oh, well, tell you what, I'll turn to a random page, and if you can tell me what some of the big words mean, I'll let you check it out. And I was like, okay.
The story is my favorite.
Here's the random page. So what does, and she picked out a real English word. I don't remember what it was, but I knew what it was, and I was able to give her the definition. And then she continued looking at the page, and she was like, well, what is that word? And I was like, that's Kashyyyk. That's the home planet of the Wookiees. She's like, what are Wookiees? And I was like, Chewbacca is a Wookiee. This is him on the cover of the book. Can I just have the book? And the librarian was like, yeah, you can have the book. Okay. You obviously know what you're talking about. But yeah, for like 5 solid years, that was literally all that I fucking read, aside from any required reading, which I just burned through to read more Star Wars books. So I consumed like all of the expanded universe. I love all of them. I won't say that any of them belong on like greatest books ever written lists, but I did want to specifically have on mine Traitor, because it's a more recent one that I've read. It's sort of a side story from the Yuuzhan Vong War, the New Jedi Order series. And what I like about it the most is that it follows pretty much one protagonist the entire time, which is pretty rare of the expanded universe books. They're always jumping. You got to see what Leia's doing. Got to see what Han's doing. What's Luke up to? What's Corran Horn up to? What's Kip?
Even if
like
new characters, they're jumping through.
Yeah, dude, just
ones.
nonstop jumping back and forth, like the movies do. You know, they follow multiple plots, but
sure.
But it's cool to spend a lot more time with just one character and really get to know what's going on inside his head. And it's Jason Solo, who is a super interesting character. One of the twin sons of Han and Leia. Force sensitive. One of the best members of Luke's new Jedi Order. And he's captured by the Yuuzhan Vong and is slowly turned to the dark side by a servant of theirs who, unbeknownst to them, is a dark side user from the Clone Wars era, Vergray, who's like a bird-like creature that the Yuuzhan Vong keep around because they think she's almost like a court jester kind of character. Like they think her species is just real weird and that she's real entertaining, so they don't kill her, and she kind of accepts their ways. They have no idea that she's a Force user. She keeps it hidden for like decades as she's in their control. And she's trying to turn Jason to the dark side, and you think like, shit, she's evil, but she's actually trying to turn Jason to the dark side to give him the power to destroy the Yuuzhan Vong. So that's really the crux of why I like it. It presents the dark side as like not the bad guys, but just another solution.
Yeah,
the
other guys.
Yeah, to a big problem. The problem being the Yuuzhan Vong.
Yeah.
It also has one of my favorite moments with any of the other expanded universe characters, Ganner Rhysode, who is a Jedi Knight, and he is sort of a cocky, smarmy, arrogant guy. He when he finds out he's a Jedi at Luke's Academy, his characterization is always like, well, I have these powers, I am destined to be like a great fucking hero.
Yeah.
And acts like it even though he hasn't done anything great or heroic with his life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's cocky. You don't really like him. And he's in earlier books, but he's totally redeemed by Matthew Stover in this book. The Yuuzhan Vong are a race that has like no force sensitivity, and they're structured in a caste system, and they hate the Jedi. But the lowest members of their caste, like who are slaves, in their time in the Star Wars universe, begin to worship the Jedi, and they call it the Great Jedi Heresy. And they begin to make like larger than life legends, and they end up being prophecies. And they have one of the Ganner, and the Ganner is this giant that they start telling stories about that stands at the gates of like hell, basically the gates of the undead world, or the dead world, if you will. And he's a swordsman who stops the dead from entering the world of the living. Basically, like I don't know what this. They playing football outside and yelling, but whatever. He stops the dead from crossing over into the world of the living, like in order to stop ghosts. Essentially, is the point of it. Okay. And so in their legends, he's sort of like a reverse Hades, right? He guards the gates of hell. He shouts his mantra of none shall pass. And he's constantly being bombarded with everyone in the universe who's ever died, trying to get past him. And he cuts all of them down like nobody can ever get past him. So he's like a god that they mention. And this is like brought up earlier. And then it becomes a prophecy, and you see where it comes from, because Ganner has a moment where he defends Jason Solo, and it's one of the best fucking moments in all of Star Wars. There's a top 10 list that Star Wars Insider, which is a magazine, ran a while back.
Okay.
Of top 10 best moments in the expanded universe, and this made it. And it's Jason Solo's inside of what's called the World Well, where there is this brain that the Yuuzhan Vong have grown to control the what's it called when you terraform, to control the terraforming of Coruscant.
Okay.
And it's destroying all of Coruscant basically and turning it back into green, life and foliage and what have you. And Jason's communing with it through the Force, trying to convince it to basically it makes a good point about fanaticism. So the Yuuzhan Vong do not accept anything mechanical, right?
Right.
Everything is organic, and it has to be their version of perfect. And so they're forcing the universe to become their idea of perfect, right?
Okay.
Jason realizes the only way to defeat that is to force them to understand the concept of compromise. Not even to defeat them, but like that there'll never be peace unless they can learn to compromise. So this world brain is like creating all their things, and it's supposed to create them in a certain way that's perfect. And he can make them all like non-functional, and he doesn't do that. Instead, he says just make them a little bit not perfect, because so much resources and effort has gone into it that their only choices are to accept the imperfections or to kill the world brain and grow another one, which will take like decades and will totally destroy all hopes that they have of ruling the galaxy, right?
Okay.
So as he's doing this, Ganner Rhizode stands outside and fights off thousands of Yezin Vong, and it's really fucking cool. It presents everybody in such a cool way. It even humanizes the Yezin Vong more so than other books in this series. Because as they're going against Ganner, Nama Nor, the head of the Yezin Vong at this point, is like, fucking get him with the poison gas, get him with bombs, everybody rush in there and kill him. And the other Yezin Vong, who are supposed to be listening to this guy and taking orders, are like, absolutely not. This warrior has issued a challenge that none shall pass, and we will fight him 1 versus 1 in hand-to-hand combat, because that is the only honorable thing. Like, they could easily defeat him by just dropping a fucking bomb on him, and they're like, no, this isn't a war, this is a challenge, and we are accepting this warrior's challenge. And he fucking fights him off for hours and hours and hours. It's really fucking cool. But yeah, if you like Star Wars at all and like the expanded universe at all, I mean, you can get most context even if you're not familiar with the new Jedi Order. And it's not afraid. I feel like a lot of books, don't you agree, are really afraid to explore like the dark side.
Yeah.
And when they do, it comes off as not so great. You get like the Bane trilogy, which is well regarded, but it's even that is like kind of edgelordy, I guess you could say.
It either comes across as edgelordy or as like,
I'm fueled.
Here's from the point of view of a villain who is evil, and this is evil.
Yes.
And that's the story. It's not the case.
Right. There's a lot more nuance in this book than exists in pretty much any other book, I think, in the expanded universe.
So the whole point of Luke in the expanded universe is to show that there is nuance.
Yes. And he slips further and further out of that as the expanded universe continues, I feel like.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I'll have gone over all of our books.
Man, we love books.
Books are cool, guys. Let us know in the comments, what are your favorite books? What do you think about books? How do you like?
Do you like books?
Can you read? What's your reading level? Did
Yeah.
you have AR points?
Dude, did you have to do the thing where you read the books, and then after you read so many books, you got a free personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut?
Oh my god, that was my favorite.
I didn't like it because the Star Wars books were never on those lists.
Well, tough shit, man.
Book it.
Is that what it was
That
called?
was what it was called.
Yeah,
Book
book
it.
it. Damn
The
straight.
Book It book club. You got a little button, and then you got star stickers on that button. You got 5 stickers. You go get a personal pan pizza. The Triple P.
I just realized I should have put a Redwall book on my list, but it's okay. We'll just do an entire episode about Redwall at some point, okay?
Yeah, Redwall.
I
And
fucking
yeah.
promise you that. So as always, guys, this has been Geekout Freakout. Please do like, comment, subscribe, bing the bell. Is anybody gonna pop in with a bing the bell?
Bing it.
Bing the books. Bing the bell. Bing the books bell.
Fucking bang it, man.
Sean tried to tell me that it should be ring the bell, and then I smacked him in his dumb face.
No, you don't
You
ring
bing
a
it.
bell. You bing a bell.
You bing.
It's like, it does. I mean, when you hit a bell, it doesn't go ring. It goes bang,
Bing.
bang. Yeah, exactly.
Bing that bonger.
What?
I don't know. Jesus Christ.
Smash the like button too.
You must smash.